Have you ever imagined what will happen if the strongest person in the room isn't the one wearing a uniform, a belt, or a title, but the one quietly holding a broom, watching everything, saying nothing? One day in downtown Tokyo, inside a polished private martial arts gym lined with mirrors and national flags, a visiting Japanese black belt laughed softly and said something that sounded harmless. "Just for fun," he said, pointing casually toward a Filipino janitor mopping the edge of the mat. The room chuckled. No one expected anything serious. No one imagined that this small moment, barely noticed, barely remembered, would unravel a hidden truth about humility, discipline, and a kind of strength rarely recognized. The janitor's name, as most people knew it, was Ernesto. He had worked in that building for years, arriving before sunrise, leaving long after evening classes ended. He wore the same faded uniform every day, kept his head low, spoke gently, and bowed slightly whenever someone passed. To most students, he was part of the background, like the sound of footsteps or the echo of fists hitting pads. Invisible, but always there. The black belt was a rising name in competitive circles. Decorated, confident, young. He had trained since childhood and carried himself like someone used to applause. That day, he had just finished an intense seminar, demonstrating precise movements, flawless kicks, and lightning-fast reactions. The students were energized, buzzing with admiration. And then, almost playfully, the suggestion came. "Let's see how strong our janitor is," someone joked. Ernesto froze. He looked up slowly, eyes calm, almost amused, as if he had heard this kind of thing before. Not these exact words, but the feeling behind them. He shook his head lightly, smiling. "No, sir," he said softly. "I'm just cleaning." But the room pushed. Laughter teasing. The black belt smiled too, confident, relaxed. "Just a friendly challenge," he said. "No pressure, we won't even go hard." What no one in that room knew, what no one had ever asked, was where Ernesto came from, or why a man with such controlled posture, such quiet awareness, chose to live a life where he was constantly overlooked. Ernesto had grown up in a small coastal town in the Philippines, where mornings began with roosters and the smell of salt in the air. As a boy, he learned early that strength wasn't loud. His grandfather had taught him that, an old fisherman with hands rough as coral who spoke little but watched everything. In the evenings, after nets were repaired and boats secured, the old man would teach Ernesto how to move, not like a fighter, but like water. Balanced, patient, ready but never aggressive. There was no formal dojo, no belts, just sand, wind, and repetition. Movements passed down quietly, shaped by years of necessity rather than trophies. It wasn't about winning, it was about survival, control, and respect. And above all, humility. Life pulled Ernesto far from home. Like many Filipinos, he left to support family, carrying dreams in one pocket and responsibility in the other. Japan offered work, not glory. He took what was available. Cleaning floors, emptying bins, staying invisible, and he stayed that way on purpose. Back in the gym, the moment stretched. The instructor hesitated, sensing something off. But the crowd had already leaned in. Phones came out, smiles widened. Ernesto looked around the room, then down at the mop in his hands. He sighed gently, almost affectionately, and placed it carefully against the wall. "If only light," he said, and with respect. The black belt nodded, amused. Of course. They stepped onto the mat. No announcements, no music. Just two men facing each other, one in a crisp uniform, the other in worn work shoes he quietly removed, standing barefoot on polished floors he had cleaned hundreds of times. The black belt bowed quickly, more out of habit than reverence. Ernesto bowed deeper. The first move came fast. A testing strike, controlled, confident. Ernesto didn't retreat. He didn't block in the way the students expected. He simply shifted, barely, like someone stepping aside to let wind pass. Murmurs rippled through the room. The second move came sharper. Ernesto's eyes stayed calm. His breathing never changed. The crowd grew quiet. Something felt wrong, or rather, unexpected. The black belt adjusted, tried again, adding speed. Ernesto moved with him, not against him. No wasted motion, no aggression, just presence. Each step placed with intention, like someone who had learned long ago that energy is precious. A few seconds passed. Then 10, then more. No one was laughing now. The instructor stood up straighter. A student whispered, "Who is he?" Ernesto gently guided the black belt off balance, not forcefully, not dramatically, just enough to make a point. The black belt stumbled, caught himself, eyes wide. The room gasped. Ernesto stepped back immediately, hands lowered. "Enough," he said kindly. Silence fell like a curtain. The black belt stared, breathing harder now, not from exhaustion but realization. He bowed deeply this time, not for show, for understanding. And in that quiet moment, something shifted. Not just in the room, but in the story everyone thought they were watching. Because this was never about a challenge. It was about a truth hidden in plain sight. And no one there was prepared for what would happen next. The silence lingered longer than anyone expected, thick and uncomfortable, like the air before a storm that never comes. The students avoided each other's eyes. The phones that had been raised moments earlier were now slowly lowered, forgotten. The black belt straightened his uniform, but something in his posture had changed. The confidence was still there, but it had been humbled, reshaped. He spoke first. "Sir," he said carefully, choosing his words with a respect he had not shown before. "Where did you learn to move like that?" Ernesto smiled, the same gentle smile he wore every morning while wiping mirrors no one noticed. "From my grandfather," he replied, "and from life." The instructor finally stepped forward, bowing deeply. "You didn't have to accept," he said. "But thank you for teaching us," Ernesto bowed back. "I didn't teach," he said softly. "I only reminded." Word spread quietly after that day. Not loudly, not on headlines or posters, just whispers among students, trainers, cleaners, guards. The janitor was no longer just a janitor. But Ernesto didn't change his routine. The next morning he still arrived before sunrise. He still cleaned the mats with the same care, as if every surface deserved respect. When students greeted him, he bowed and smiled, nothing more. Some tried to ask questions. Some asked him to train them. He always declined politely. "This place already has teachers," he would say. And learning is not only from fighting. But a few evenings later, when the gym was empty and the lights dimmed, the instructor found Ernesto stretching quietly by the window. The city glowed outside, distant and restless. This time there were no jokes, no crowd. "You carry discipline without needing to prove it," the instructor said. "That is rare," Ernesto nodded. "In the Philippines," he said, "we learn early that pride feeds the ego, but humility feeds the family." He spoke of home then, of leaving not because he wanted to, but because he had to, of sending money back month after month quietly, of being strong enough to be unseen. The instructor listened without interrupting, realizing that the strongest lessons often come from those who never raise their voice. The black belt returned weeks later. He bowed to Ernesto before anyone else. "I trained my whole life to win," he said. "You trained your whole life to understand." Ernesto chuckled lightly. Understanding lasts longer. Over time, the gym changed. Not dramatically, but subtly. Students began bowing deeper, laughing less at easy targets, listening more. Respect grew, not because rules demanded it, but because an example had been set. No official story was ever posted. No viral clip was shared. And maybe that was the point. The moment wasn't meant for the world. It was meant for those who were there. Back home in the Philippines, Ernesto's mother received her regular call. She asked how work was. He said it was fine. She asked if he was eating well. He said yes. She never asked if he was respected. She already knew the answer. Because Filipinos grow up knowing something the world often forgets. That dignity does not come from titles. That strength does not need an audience. That the quiet ones are often carrying the heaviest weight. Years later, when Ernesto finally returned home, he walked barefoot again on familiar sand. The ocean greeted him like an old friend. Young boys watched him move as he stretched at sunset, curious, unaware of where his journey had taken him. He smiled at them, just as his grandfather once smiled at him. "Slow," he told them gently. "Feel the ground, respect it." And somewhere far away, in a polished gym with mirrored walls, a new generation trained differently, not harder, not louder, but wiser, because of a lesson taught by a man holding a broom. Sometimes the most shocking moments aren't about power, they're about perspective. And sometimes the people the world overlooks are the ones quietly holding its deepest truths. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more untold stories like this, and stay tuned, because the next hidden truth might be closer than you think.